Mandy Walker is the cinematographer of Baz Luhrmann's hit film Elvis, one of the most celebrated of the year. Before we get into that, Mandy, I just wanted to ask if you could go back in time and be the cinematographer for any Elvis film, what would it be and why?
Oh wow. Boy, you know what? I feel like I would love to have done all of them because they did them really quickly and there was not a lot of visual style to those films. So I would have loved to have been able to jump in and give them a bit of style.
Did you have a favorite Elvis movie?
Um, Not really. Let me think. Oh, I can't think right now. Uh, you know what? My favorite Elvis movies were the documentaries, basically. Because I studied them so much. We didn't study the drama as much as we studied the documentary footage of him, and that was my favorite. So I loved That's the Way It Is and the '68 special in the end.
And you'd worked with Baz before on Australia. What were your thoughts when he contacted you about this and said, I want to do a movie about the life of Elvis Presley?
Well, I was really excited. I mean, I've also done the two Chanel No. 5 campaigns with Baz. So we've actually worked together for 20 years, over 20 years. And I was extremely excited because I thought, there couldn't be a more perfect person to make this film about such an iconic character, and also, the whole visual language and his epic journey. I felt like the Baz was perfect person to do it, so I was extremely excited.
And it's not really a traditional biopic. I mean, nothing Baz does is really traditional. It's really got this sort of magical feeling to the whole thing. What were your discussions like in those early stages and sort of preparing what you thought the vision of the movie should be?
Well, Baz got me involved very early on this project. Like we started talking in 2019, and when he had like a basic idea for the script that he told me, we talked about the story and how he wanted to, represent Elvis, and how, the period of American culture that he grew up in, or the periods, and how he affected American culture. So he gave me like plenty of sort of early sort of storytelling ideas that I go off and start researching. And I was there for Austin's audition too. So he gets me really, really early on. And I was there taking photos, running around with my Leica, looking at angles on Austin's face and then going back and showing Baz and saying, this way this 3/4 looks more like Elvis, or because he did a performance in his audition, and then just looking at camera angles and just starting right from the very beginning. And then I did a lot of research on the existing footage that you can see online now, the NBC '68 special and That's the Way It Is, which, like I was saying, became like my favorite movies. And then because I knew that I would have to reproduce those sequences in the movie. And also, there's a lot of, I looked at a lot of art and photography and historical images from the time that he grew up and the areas that he grew up. So, for instance, in Memphis and Tupelo, to find a look that that represented at that time and that environment to an audience. So I was looking at still photographers such as Gordon Parks and Sol Leiter, and then obviously the Vegas time was color and rich and 1970. So what I also did was I made two different lenses for the movie. So the first set of lenses was more kind of spherical and flatter and more representative of still photography. And then once he gets to Vegas, we shot anamorphic. And I shot on lenses. I had lenses made that had all the old, early 70s aberrations put back into them, because, modern anamorphic lenses have a cleaner style and a cleaner kind of finish. And I put all those you know, the way the bouquet is and how the flare, I've got more colors put back into the flare so they didn't have like a modern blue flare, just little iterations like that. And I got Panavision to make these lenses, and also I had a Petsvale lens made, which is the lens that we used during the Colonel's kind of morphine experiences, which is like, it's like a lens where it just go out of focus and it just focuses on the center. It's like a vortex. And so because I wanted to do that practically, so yes, that was the beginning of all my research, and also, you know, just studying. I studied all the camera angles for each of those concerts that they shot, because I knew I was going to reproduce them, and also, you know, how we were going to reproduce the Rustwood concert. There was a stills photographer called Alfred Wertheimer that travelled with Elvis from. There was and he did a little bit of 16 mil actually, which we found. So that was my reference for that. And then the Hayride, there was some very, you know, with Elvis with the pink suit, there was some very old, some stills photographs from concerts of those time, because I had to reproduce all the lighting as well, and to get that exactly right and of the period and feel representative of the time for an audience.
Is that the most challenging thing to do when you have something that's real, is to sort of, I mean, these are things people can go watch on YouTube, as you said. So is that the hardest thing for you if you have to match something?
Yeah, well, yeah, for instance, the biggest challenge for me was the Vegas showroom, yeah, at the Hilton, because that we built that on a sound stage, from backstage, huge set, from backstage to the side of the stage, the stage obviously, and the auditorium. We built about a third of the auditorium. And so for me, that was the biggest one, because that is the one where you can see exactly the lighting changes for each of the songs, and the color, and the effects of the follow spot on, and you know how it worked. So I meticulously studied that and got a lot to have to research and find old lighting fixtures too, with something I had to do with the art department, because for that and the 68 special and for the older concerts, there's a lot of lighting that's in shot. So I had to get period lights, and a lot of them I had to put my modern lighting into those fixtures, or integrate our LED lighting as much as I could that was off camera, because for me to be able to manage the color palette and the lighting changes and dimming and stuff, the more LED I could incorporate, the better, because I could have more access to it rather than getting people on ladders to change gels all the time and everything. But the other thing I did, you know, for those concerts is I had my crew come in and a little earlier than they normally do, and they learnt the songs and they learnt the choreography, and we did a lot of rehearsals with Austin, because my team had to dance with him on the stage, and so we would for a start walk around with an iPad and go, well, they had a camera here and this is the lens, so we reproduced all that, and then we would do dress rehearsals with Austin with the cameras, so he felt comfortable with my people on stage, but also my people knew exactly when he was going to move and when he was going to come across and spin around, and they'd all be ready for that, or you know, so that was like meticulous planning that I had to do for those sequences.
I also love, like, just back when he's a child and he's, you know, peeking through the tents at the gospel choir and seeing those blues artists. When you're creating scenes like that, and you sort of have more of your own visual input for things like angles and how you decide to shoot, do you plan those meticulously, or are you sort of on the fly, like, oh, let's try this one, like, or let's try a different angle for this?
Well, because we actually, you know, we didn't have a lot of time to shoot this movie, considering how we had over 100 sets, and so as I was very meticulously planned, and we also we did a lot of testing with the art department and with costume and makeup. So we never did like a test of Austin in front of a grey piece of paper. standing there. Whenever we did a test with him, we were testing elements of lighting and elements of texture and art dressing and costume and makeup and wigs and everything all at once. And some of those tests that in the movie, but what we always did was take the crew beforehand, and we had in pre-production, we had a lot of sort of time where we would go to the sets, even as they were being built, and walk around. Baz and I would walk around and look at possibilities, because there's a lot of, well, you know, like I was saying for a start, my crew had to dance with Elvis. And so that was really important, that everybody was turning up on set and they knew exactly what was going on. But also there's a lot of transitions between each of the sets and the time periods, and when the camera has to fly from one part of his life to another, and literally does, you know. And then so those things were all planned, and the integration between like our backlot sets and on stage, because we built like exteriors on backlots of Beale Street and Graceland and that Pentecostal tent, but all the interiors were done on stage. So when we were moving from one to the other, they all had to be pre-planned.
Did you have a favorite sequence or scene that you just like had so much fun as being a part of? Is there one that really stands out?
Well, I think it has to be that show of the Vegas ballroom, because we shot that in one go. I mean, not to say we did it in one take, but we followed him from backstage, took him around the side of the stage, and Austin went on stage and performed that concert, and we kept rolling. And so we did it, you know, over 5 days or something like that. But we did it in one go. And so I had all my cameras plotted. We had 5 cameras for that sequence every day. And we would reproduce the shots from the documentary, and then we would do our own dramatic versions of those shots, you know, especially because, you know, at the time, for instance, in that sequence, the Colonel's in the audience selling Elvis for the next 5 years, and he's on stage in the background. So that kind of connection between the two of them was always drama going on during the concert sequences. So I was very cognizant of how to integrate that into the performance. And we shot all of the performance, all the songs we shot in their entirety. They're not in the film in their entirety. But for me, that was my biggest challenge going into that, into the film, was because it's such a huge setup to set up that showroom. And I'm really proud of it. And I loved the experience of that. And just, you know, I mean, Austin's so incredible that, you know, being able to work with him and being able to make him feel safe, that when he was on stage performing, we all knew exactly what we were doing. And so no one's going to bump into him, or, you know, he knew where the crane was going to be. We had rehearsed these sequences. So yeah, that to me was my favorite.
This was such a huge role for us to take on, obviously. While you were filming that, were you like, a star is being born here? I mean, could you just feel it in the room?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. And the other thing is that, like, you know, when we were doing those concerts, my team were all ended up like bopping away in the background. And one of the grips that Baz had worked with for 30 years, you know, from his very first movie, came up to him and said, you know, and he's like one of those, you know, rough as guts grips. And he said, Baz, I've done, you know, so many movies, Star Wars, and worked with Terrence Malick and Matrix, and done all this. He said, this is the highlight of my career. And it was like we were watching a star perform, because he's so amazing, Austin, and he just has it. And he's so charismatic, as well as being a really nice guy, I have to say. You know, he's a very lovely person. And so that experience, I felt really special.
And just a final question, what's it like just seeing the whole project come together? You've done your part and it's all edited and finished. What's it like to go to that, you know, theater and see it all come out on screen?
Well, I still really enjoy it, because the things that, you know, happen later in the editing, of course, and with the music, just enhances what I've done. You know, all those split screen sequences and the montage that we shot separately, you know, knowing that it was going to go in, and we would shoot Elvis and Austin on Elvis and Austin. We'd shoot Austin on one angle, knowing that on this side of the screen he's looking that way, and this side of the screen he's going to look at the other way, or we're going to do a montage of the cape. And so all those things, once they're integrated and put together, it only enhances my work. And I mean, I was really pleased to see that, you know, the thing about color in this movie is really important, and the transition of color and the way we move the camera through each of the time periods was really integral in creating that journey for an audience. And that I'm really proud of too, because, you know, we had to represent these different periods of American culture and his experiences. And, you know, for instance, like at Tupelo, before he goes into Pentecostal tent, when he first sees that Gary Clark Jr. playing in that shed, I tried to create that shed so it was look like sort of a little nightclub, and there was little beams of light coming in, like little spotlights and things like that. So for me, once the music and the sound come in and the editing, I find it, you know, I'm just so happy the experience is in harmony, you know, that all these departments are in harmony.
Well, Mandy, congratulations on this film and all the success it's had and well-deserved accolades that it continues to receive. And best of luck with everything coming up, like the Oscars, the Guild Awards, everything else. Viewers can go to goldderby.com, make your awards predictions. And Mandy, thanks so much for chatting with me about Elvis today.
My pleasure, Denton. Lovely to chat with you.